Mr. Dunn,
Indeed. Press the green button.
you have 10 minutes at the most, Mr. Dunn.
It's like a quiz, isn't it? I'm reminded of my visit to the ablutions. This is not a very accessible building, and I've complained about that before. That,
That's not in our remit either.
well,
I'm
it should
afraid.
be in your it should be in your remit, because you are the inspectors and you inspect such things presumably before you accept your commission, and that's one of
Well,
my...
when we accepted this building, the lift was working.
Well, I understand that particular inconvenience, but that it was...
Anyway, let's get on to what you
Anyway,
want to
I
tell
also
us.
link it to the use of these things, because the government directive is that they shall be worn at occasions like this, and I've noticed the first day I attended it, we had a public audience. It wasn't the vast one that are watching on the screen, as you had pointed out, but there were a sufficient number of people here, and these are optional. Now, I shan't be wearing it now because I can't read because my glasses steam up.
Yeah, well, that's a problem. Precisely the problem I have.
Exactly, I understand that. But generally, the government directive is that these shall be worn. And I notice that is generally ignored. I went to the farming conference. This is new information. I went to the farming conference the other day. It was 140 people. I was the only person there wearing a mask, and we were very tightly assembled. You know,
Mr. Dunn, we are going to stop you at 10 o'clock, so you better get to the point you really want to make about the plan.
That's very tight 10 minutes, isn't it?
It is.
Anyway,
very
you'll be
tight.
glad to know I don't think there's any point in my proceeding with the submission I had prepared for today's hearing. Yesterday I attended the celebration organised by the Romanian National Day in Jersey, not in Romania. It was also attended by the Lieutenant Governor, the Bailiff, the Dean, the Chief Minister, and about 50 other people. In her introduction, the Honourable Romanian Consul referred to her gratitude for living in Jersey and being part of a community of so many different nationalities, different cultures and religions. The meeting discussed organising a major arts and cultural festival next year for everybody to take part in, to embrace all nationalities. Then I went home and read the racism and xenophobia on Facebook in the discussions about Jersey's housing shortage. And I thought, what is the point about speaking about this, yet again, the housing shortage and the non-quals? What's the point of speaking about it yet again before the planning inspectors, you two, as I did in 2011, 2014, and the likes of Mr. Pilley, who was there then, and others responding in the same dismissive way as they always do, as though the non-quals sector, for example, is just a few potato pickers or hotel KPs. They ignore the 12,000 plus. They ignore the 12,000 plus working people. I mean, it could be 15,000 now, I don't know. Who knows? Nobody knows. Without qualifications, as some sort of triviality. Not even worthy of a mention in the bridging plan or the so-called examinations taking place here and now. So I am supposed to talk today about international obligations, non-discrimination issues, work permits and the non-qual section of housing demand. But why should I bother? Who is listening? It's a human rights seminar I organised in 1992. I might as well have not bothered then. I've been wasting my time for all those years. I've already submitted relevant information many times, from 1992 onwards and before and since. Others, such as late Ed Lecain and Monseigneur France, the former Catholic Dean of Jersey, have spoken at previous examinations about the non-qual sector and the terrible housing conditions that people in that group suffer. And they are referred to in the reports, previous reports of inspectors, the guys who sat in your place now. They reported and suggested things should happen, should be looked at, should be reviewed. Nothing changes. The hostile environment created for the non-quals, thousands, unknown thousands, many working in finance, they're not potato pickers, and other most important jobs, is as always to be contrasted with the concern shown towards the well-being of bats and other wild creatures, and our obligations under international treaties to protect them, the bats and the wild creatures.
Mr. Dunn, can I just try and get a handle on what you're saying? Are you saying that the plan should actually provide more housing on the island
I'm saying,
for a range of people who come who come onto the island?
At this stage of my 10 minutes, I'm suggesting that we need more. The information should be in the plan in order to arrive at these decisions about more housing or less. Obviously, if you've got a fifth of the working population who are not even allowed to rent or buy accommodation, that in any normal society would have a profound effect. So if you're going to determine such things as housing demand, you have to take them into account. If you live in lodgings and if you have privacy, you're breaking the law in this island. I mean, it's a mix of housing human rights, it's a mix of housing demand, it's a mix of money that goes into the housing market, because money that they pay doesn't go into the public funds, it goes into a landlord's pocket, because they're lodgers by definition.
Yeah.
Now, so it's a mix of all sorts of things, and unless that is addressed in the planning, bridge planning or the island plan stage, unless these things are brought together, all these different elements, somebody's got to be looking at them and say, well, what is the effect? So if there's the need to build housing, which I think there is, there's a desperate need to build housing. There was a housing law in 1949, the housing law was brought in to prevent further aggravation of the housing shortage. That's why in its original format. And it's been modified and changed and made more repressive ever since. And it's going to get more repressive under the work in the housing law, which is coming in, and the settled status, the whole bag of ridiculous and absurd and obscene regulations which are in place. And you guys ought to be taking note of this and saying, as planners, is this legitimate? Should professional planners be going along with this? Should we? Is that correct? And it should be written in the island plan, the bridging plan or the island plan. It should be written in there. This is a consideration. What effect is all this having on such things as housing? Because it's not just the numbers of housing, it's the quality and the distribution of them, where they are. The Children's Commission, I'm coming to this, if you extend my 10 minutes by 3 minutes. So what we're creating effectively is a hostile environment. Well, you've heard a great deal about it in the UK, people came from Jamaica, make life difficult for people. So you've got people who live here, they have to get their 10 years qualifications. They don't stay here for 10 years. A lot of them go after 3 years because they get so fed up, the humiliation, they want to get married and have children and not allowed to occupy proper accommodation. They go away. And that's how the system works. It's hostile. That's the way it works. They pay their social security, they pay their income tax for what? Many are working in finance. They're not just working in, Mr. Pilley the other day sort of implied as few people working in farming or something, sort of dismissing them as being seasonal workers of no consequences. They're everybody. 12, 15,000 people, I don't know. That's how it was.
I don't think we can, that's not right. Mr. Pilley didn't dismiss them as being of no consequence. I've never.
Well, no, he didn't use those words, but the implication of what he said.
We can't allow things like that to be said that in a public forum that weren't really quite right. I mean, I take your point. We're going to ask.
Well, I hope you will ask him.
For a response.
I hope you will.
And as you heard, we have a limited remit here in terms of what we have to do with the bridging island plan. I mean, what I'm really keen to hear you say is what you think should be included in the plan. You seem to be talking about a lot of other things that should happen.
Well, they're integral. They're part
the legislation of Jersey,
they should be in the plan.
We have no control over whatsoever.
There's a concern about bats. They say, international agreement on bats, we can't lock that building down, we can't do this development because bats have to be protected. I'm saying international agreements have applications to human beings as well. And where is the list? They were talking in the previous plans. The 350 international human conventions, treaties, all sorts of aspects of things. Where are they? What are they? Which ones do they apply? We never know. I've asked this question so many times, and they won't tell us. Nobody knows what they are anymore. This used to appear in the front of the island plan, 350 international conventions, treaties, obligations. The most I can get now is 70. I gave you the paperwork.
I've seen them all. Yeah,
I gave you the paperwork.
Yeah,
okay.
I've seen them.
But the general public hasn't got a clue. Who's talking here about international obligations? Who's coming to you and saying, look, one lady came up and said, the compulsory purchase law, there's no appeal in it. It's possibly a human rights violation.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what you've
remember
done. I don't know what you've done. I haven't followed every hearing. What have you done to follow that up? Is it a human rights violation? Is there a potential human rights violation? Because obviously, compulsory purchase can be an integral part of providing housing accommodation, or any accommodation, or building a hospital, or anything. It can be integral. If there's a human rights, and if it has to go to the Privy Council or the Court of Human Rights, and there is a 10-year delay, well, you get the picture.
I do get the picture, and I'm going to ask Mr. Pilley to respond if he wishes to.
Thank you, sir. Perhaps just starting with the point that it's not civil servants that approve the island plan. It's clearly the Island States Assembly and the elected members of the Assembly who approve the island plan, sir. And I think the other issue to raise is clearly the island plan seeks to meet the housing needs of all islanders, and we take forward the island plan based on an assessment of the demographics within the island, and seek to plan for the homes that are required throughout the population of the island, sir. And that's not to the exclusion of any part of that population from a planning law perspective. I think the issue that perhaps Mr. Dunn struggles with is the extent to which the island plan can address these issues relative to other legal instruments that may be operated by the government, sir. And clearly the Minister for the Environment is limited in what he can do by the planning and building law and the requirements that sets out in terms of the island plan. As I say, sir, the island plan seeks to meet the needs, the island's housing needs. It does not regulate the access to different parts of the housing market. That's a function of the control of housing and work law, sir, and that's administered by the Chief Minister, not by the Minister for the Environment. Where the island plan can have regard to the quality of accommodation, it does so, and we have a range of policies that seek to ensure that the housing that is provided is of a good standard of accommodation and is of high quality, and we have regard to various policies and strategies that are developed by the states to address the issue of housing, not least the Minister for Housing and Communities Housing Action Plan and things like the homelessness strategy, sir. So those issues are addressed as far as they can be through the island plan. As I say, sir, it's a development plan that seeks to meet the needs of all islanders.
Mr. Dunn, thank you. Thank you for. I'm sorry, I don't think we're going to be able to satisfy you with your international treaties.
Can I just point out, this is 166 pages here. This is a report prepared by the Swansea University for the Children's Commissioner, and it's described as the legislative gap analysis under one convention, Convention on the Rights of the Child, which was signed up recently, and it shows. It's rather instructive where it says, to put it another way, we have an overview of the changes that will be required if the government is to truly deliver on its commitment to putting children first. Now, we've heard that expression, putting children first, so many times. This report says on that convention alone. So this commissioner has drawn particular attention to those people who live in non-qualified accommodation and how their children suffer as a result of living in deficient accommodation. For him, for Mr. Pilley and his department to say, well, people with the non-qual sector is not to be considered. Ask Mr. Pilley,
I don't think he
how
says
many
that
are
at
there?
all.
How many are there? How many people is he excluding from his plan?
I'm sorry, but he's not saying that at all. And I'm sorry.
Well, he's not including them, is he? Where in his plan is he including them?
Well,
people without qualifications. He talks all the time about housing need, but only for those people who've got qualifications.
do you want to come back on that, Mr.
I think I've made the point, sir, that the plan seeks to meet the needs of the housing needs of all islanders. With regard to the particular issue of children, sir, Mr. Dunn is correct that the Convention of the Rights of the Child has been extended to Jersey, sir. That was extended to Jersey in 2014. And as part of the preparation of the draft plan, we've undertaken a children's rights impact assessment, which does what Mr. Dunn seeks to secure in terms of looking at the implications of the island plan and its relevance to the objectives set out in that convention, sir. So, and I think the island plan is probably one of the first policy documents produced by the states that seeks to address some of those specific challenges, sir.
Mr. Dunn, they're trying. You might think they're not trying hard enough, but they are trying.
Well, that's not good enough.
Well,
Mark,
okay.
3 out of 10.
3 out of 10. Okay, we've noted it. Thank you, Mr. Dunn, for your contribution. We're going to swap around now, and because other people have arrived who are due to address us in the next session. Thank you very much.